Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Building Doctor Show. I'm Jerod, your host today. I'm thrilled to have you join us and learn more about your building. Today, we're going to talk about plumbing repipes because this is becoming a big issue and we're doing a lot of them currently. Plumbing is a 40 to 50-year-old replacement item, so oftentimes it's not even on your reserve study, which only looks at 30 years or less, and it doesn't get added in time to properly save for it. I know a lot about 50. I turned 50 this year. All year I'm 50. Today we're going to talk about buildings that are built in the 70s, 80s, but also there was a wave of bad plumbing components in the 90s and 2000s that are failing, and now the new green piping Aquatherm is starting to show issues, and that just was the latest, greatest 10 years ago. At J2, we put together a 30-page guide that is a technical and can be confusing. We'll attach that in the chat, and today we'll go through this with you, help you understand it. I would ask all of you to check your building's age and reserve studies to see if you're planning for this. Hopefully, after today's show, you'll be more aware of how this works. For our podcast and YouTube listeners, thank you for tuning in. You can also put your questions and comments in the chat there, and we will get those answered for you. Don't forget to subscribe and like us wherever you are listening. I hope those of you attending live have lots of questions or stories to share because they help steer the show and give everyone value. If you have more specific questions, stay tuned for a link to schedule a free one-on-one call with one of our building doctors. Our producer, Carolyn, will be moderating the chat and we'll go through the Q&A panel at the end of the show. I'll also be doing a raffle giveaways at the end, so stick around for that too to win some cool J2 stuff. Remember, the show is for educational content only. We're not giving legal or financial advice. This is my first show solo, so bear with me. I might speed up and slow down, so we'll do this together. And I'm all anxious for Thanksgiving in a couple days, so right on. Today's agenda: define plumbing, supply and drain lines. We'll start with a quick, clear definition of what plumbing actually includes, both the supply and drain lines, and why each matters. From there, we'll dig into the real-world symptoms of failing plumbing that HOA boards and managers should watch for, and talk through how crews access plumbing for repairs, especially in multi-unit buildings. A big focus today is what happens when residents are still living in the homes, occupied. So we'll cover protecting units during occupied remediation and the added layer of asbestos abatement when older materials are involved. We'll also walk step by step through the repair process and key considerations that can make or break a project: scope, materials, phasing, communication, and cost controls, before wrapping up with what everyone wants to know at the end: how repipe warranties work and what your community should expect to receive in writing. Now let's dive in. Probably not the best thing to say when talking about plumbing. The different types of lines here. So we'll go through real quick. You got the PEX lines. You've probably seen some of those. A lot of them are clear plastic, or they can be red or blue plastic type. It's a cross-linked polyethylene product. In the early mid-90s, they had some CPVC. That's more of a cream color. The earlier buildings used galvanized steel, same with copper, and then there is some PVC lines that are used, and then we've got ABS. ABS and PVC are typically used for the drain lines. Common plumbing problems. We see a lot of serious problems associated with aging galvanized steel pipes. Internal corrosion reduces the water flow and leaks become inevitable. In the drain lines, rust and internal buildup cause serious blockages and leaks, and corrosion damages your fixtures. So when that corrosion breaks loose in the line, it gets stuck in the cartridges in your sink, for your faucet, your shower, and the mixer valve and everything. When that corrosion gets stuck in those cartridges, they don't work correctly. Then everybody, you got to replace the cartridge. Sometimes works, or, it passes through and it gets in the screens on your faucets at the end. You can unscrew those and try to clean those and see if that helps with the flow of the water. But a lot of times it's the line corroding. The issue with the CPVC is they were acceptable when they were first installed. They still do install these occasionally, but the problem was the primer and the glue that they used at the joints. It caused the line to become brittle, and it can just fail without warning. If you turn your water off and turn it on too quickly, that can cause CPVC lines to pop. So it's something that you've got to be cognizant of. And just in time for Thanksgiving, look what we get to look at here. Sorry about this, folks, but as you can see, these are drain lines that have gotten too much hair in them. I don't really want to guess what is in this stuff, but those are pretty gross, you have to admit. That's what causes backups. Usually this will happen down on the ground floor, and then you'll start getting, if it's a stacked building, multi-floor residences or whatever, the lowest point is where that can start to build up. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a little later. So these are some supply line pieces here. So the supply line is the pressurized line that provides your drinking water. If you take a look at the photo there on the left, do you really want your drinking water to go through this? Everybody now is going to make sure that they use Brita filters or filters in your refrigerators or whatever, but that's what we're here to help you with. Let's dive a little deeper. Supply lines bring fresh water into your units. They're under constant pressure. That's the PEX, CPVC, copper, and galvanized steel. The drain lines, they carry the wastewater out and away. Gravity-fed systems, that's, like we said before, PVC, ABS. Cast iron was used in the past. Cast iron is the most quiet. It's the thickest, but it is also the most expensive. And that's why they shy away from cast iron usually and use the ABS or the PVC. We've got some pictures of some failing plumbing here. You got your P-trap under your sink here. That gets backed up really easy. It's right underneath your bathroom sink where you're doing all your trimming, this and that stuff gets down in there. Causes that P-trap to back up. It's not good. Down here on the bottom picture, we've got the staining in the sink. So that staining is what the water is pulling out from the corrosion in the supply lines. So that's corrosion that's getting down into your sink there. So that's what you're showering in, you're washing in, all that stuff, using it to clean your dishes. We've got a busted line up there on the top. Symptoms of failing plumbing. We have all these things. We can see water stains or rust on walls or ceilings. We get damp spots, mold growth. You can see visible leaks. The discolored water coming from the taps. That's usually the big one, the discolored water. Or, you've got reduced pressure. It takes a lot longer for hot water to get to this fixture or that fixture. That's because there is some corrosion in the line and it's blocked and it's not getting that full flow through going. If it's a supply line or something that's pressurized, like we were saying, and that will cause leaks very rapidly, or sometimes you can just hear a drip or something like that. And, there's these pictures here that you can go through. You got to be very careful. Look for staining. You can hear sounds and all things you want to avoid. How to access plumbing for repairs. This is the key. The communication with residents of the building. We need to set up a schedule when we're doing all of this work that minimizes water shutoffs. We don't want to be causing heartache for the residents, owners, whatever the case may be. We'll go through, we walk the units, and we go through, document all the wet walls and everything like that. Put together a summary report before the project gets going. We get the summary report to those units that we've walked through. That way they're very aware of what is going to happen. It takes a lot of communication and professional consultations. Accurately assesses the existing plumbing problem, develop a comprehensive and efficient repair plan, minimize the disruption to residents, ensure compliance with local codes and regulations, and prevent costly mistakes and delays. So this is what we start doing when we do the walkthrough. We'll look at a unit's floor plan and kind of look and say, okay, from these two different floor plans we've got here, you can see where there's the bathroom. You don't want to start, we never, I can't say never, we don't like removing flooring. We'll go through ceilings because it's way easier to fix sheetrock than it is to replace flooring, match any kind of tile or anything like that. Backsplashes on around sinks, we try to avoid that. So we look at the walls that have got the plumbing in it and then try to address that from the opposite side of the wall, which is usually a hallway. If we're lucky, it's a hallway. Unfortunately, a lot of times in condominiums or apartments, when we're looking at kitchens, the kitchens, they back right up into each other. So then we have to not sacrifice, but we pick one kitchen to go through, which has got current materials that are easier to replace. We don't like taking off any kind of specialized, tile that you can't get anymore or anything like that. So it takes a lot of planning to go through, walk through all these units and determine where this is all going to happen. So as I was talking before about the summary report, when we go and do these projects, typically about 4 to 6 weeks before we start in your stack, which is the first, second, third, fourth floor, however many floors your building has, that's how these projects are attacked. They're done by a stack because everything is going vertically. We look at it, get it all set up. About 6 weeks in advance, we reach out to the resident, schedule a walkthrough for them that gives them a couple weeks to get ready. We come in, walk through the unit, take photos of the areas that are going to be affected, and then we put together, I was talking about, a summary report. The summary report has the floor plan for your unit in it. We highlight all the areas that are going to be affected, and then we've taken photos of the actual unit, and then we label the photos and highlight and mark out in the actual photos what needs to be moved out of the way to give plumbers access to the area that they're going to be doing the working. It's a lot of questions when we're walking through, and I tell people they don't have to remember everything because it is a lot to go through. So they just ask their questions that they had ready, and then we go through, mark all, we don't mark the walls or anything, but we show them the areas that are going to be affected and take the photos, and then they look for the summary report to come out, and it has the schedule included in it, a lot of information that talks about the sequencing of the work, how long it's going to take. When you're working in a stack typically takes anywhere from 5 to 8 weeks to do. That's not saying that somebody's going to be in your unit every day for that 5 to 8 weeks. That would be seriously inconvenient. They're working in that entire stack. So they need to make sure that they have access in case something happens above or below them. But as they're working through, like in the first floor, they're going to run the first and second floors plumbing through their ceiling. So then that way we're not tearing up the second floor, their flooring or anything like that. And then we can kind of split the ceiling. I always kind of joke and say, okay, whoever's ceiling we're going through, the person up above, they need to buy the person down below a Christmas card or whatever the next year because they're taking the brunt of the work in there. And then the top floor, if you're on the top floor, it's usually very minimal work because they're going to stub up into your unit. It's still inconvenient, but it's a lot less than with them going through your ceilings. Here's a couple of examples. So you've got the photo here on the left. That's where, the backside there is, the hot water tank, all of that is in there, laundry room. Instead of taking all that stuff in and out, in and out, in and out, they've done the work from the hallway side. You can see in the middle photo there, we weren't able to do the work from the opposite side, so they had to take the vanity out of the bathroom and they're just addressing it right underneath there like that. And then on the right side over here, we're still working in a hallway, and then they've got some runs up in here in the ceiling where you can see some of the PEX line that's stubbing out up there in the ceiling to where they're running that, and again, not tearing up flooring. This is it's very intrusive, to be honest with you. I don't never tell people this is easy or anything like that. When we're doing this work, we're getting into people's most private spaces. I mean, we all have company over and everything like that. You don't want people going in your bathroom and looking underneath your sinks or anything like that. And that's what we do. We walk in and start taking pictures under your sink. We're looking around your toilet, and I know people aren't super thrilled about that, but it's all programmed, and we've got it set up, and we've got a pretty good technique for getting all this stuff taken care of, and the results have been pretty good. The biggest thing is, acknowledging that this is people's private personal space. So whoever we're working with, we make sure that they take very good care of it. They protect everything. They put plastic up, they're covering everything. They need to minimize the dust. That's the big thing. Oh, look, there's me over there on the left side. Just things are plasticated, protected. That way we're not causing any damage. Over here on the right side, it's plastic runners. If they're not got runners going down, it's drop cloth, so they're not dragging anything across the floor and causing any kind of damage or anything like that. Okay, here we go. Protecting the homes during occupied remediation. And that's the key. It's occupied. People can be in their units when this work is going on. Nobody has to move out. We'll talk about the only time when people have to move out in a little while. For now, though, that's how we protect it. Plastic sheeting and barriers to protect home and the belongings. There can be some HEPA filters and air scrubbers for dust control. We're protecting furniture the valuable items. We ask that you move the valuable items out of the way, bowl and china shop type thing. In the areas that we're working, we don't want anybody having all their, Chihuly glass sculptures or anything sitting right there. We ask to get that on the other side of the room, and people are always very, very willing to move that stuff out of the way. We clean up daily. It's not like the guys, the crews can't come in. And that's why this work takes a little bit longer. Like I said, 5 to 8 weeks. Typically, when they get in to plumb your unit, it takes 2 weeks just to do the plumbing, because every day they come in, they have to set up, they have to have a great plan on what they're doing for that day. They come in the morning, they set up, they've got to do all their, put down all their protection, their containment and everything, and then they can start to work. But by the end of the day, they got to make sure they can button everything back up, and you've got all your sinks and toilets and, you know, hot water at the end of every day. And hospitality goes a long ways. A few quick questions. Will my kids be safe with this work going on? Absolutely. I that is a big thing. That's why we make sure everything's covered up. There's nothing left that's going to be unsafe. Um, will we let the cat out accidentally? No. That's always a big thing. When we go through and do our summary walkthrough, we're always asking about cats and dogs. I have cats. I know how they are. Most of them will just take off and you'll never see them, and they go hide in the back room furthest from everybody. And then there's the cat that's sitting right next to the door. As soon as the door cracks open, they want to bolt out. So we ask people if they've got cats that, want to be escape artists or whatever, we ask that they keep them locked up in a bedroom or something with their box and stuff like that. So we do not have to worry about that. We don't want to worry about that. Are the workers going to be using your toilet? No, they're not. All these guys, they've got portable, facilities on site that they use. They're not using your toilet. Nobody wants other people using their toilets like that. Do I need to get up early for the work? No, not necessarily. Some people have different work schedules though. So if you're working second or third shift, there might be an issue, but we can always work with that and work through it. And can be a compromise there, but that's the curveball. Is the air quality during construction okay for my kids? Again, yes, it is. The only time you can't be in your unit is during the abatement, if that's required. Here we go. The asbestos abatement, asbestos awareness. Buildings constructed prior to the late 70s, early 80s may contain lead paint. Any age building could contain asbestos. Disturbing these materials do pose health risk. The approach, assume their presence, perform testing, always take necessary precautions. So when we do our initial walkthrough, we do it with an environmental company that comes in and they take samples from the surfaces that are going to be affected. Those samples are all tested, and if there is any asbestos identified in that sample, then that will require abatement. That's a specialty team that comes in. They set up containment. They have to do the demolition of that area to get access to the plumbing. When they're doing that, the unit has to be empty. That is the one day during this entire project that owners have got to be out of their units. We ask that you leave at 8 in the morning and you can return at 5 o'clock at night, because they do put up all the barriers, and they essentially dexterize the areas that they're going to be, that they've got to do any openings, and they make sure that the air does not go from that area into another area. They've got monitoring devices in there, and then they take air samples, and at the end of the day, no one is allowed back into the space until they take their last sample and take it to a third-party lab and have that tested to make sure there is nothing in that sample and the air is good to go. Once we do that, then the owners are allowed back in at the end of the day, and the air's all been filtered out and everything. There's only been a couple occasions where there was a lot of it was a larger area, and to do the abatement it did take 2 days. So there were a couple of, all the units I've done, there's been a couple of units that we did ask that the people stayed out overnight. So they left one morning at 8, they were gone for the day, that evening stay at a hotel and come back the next afternoon. Has not been a problem. Typically, that's not the case. We try to set this up so it's all done in a day. We know nobody wants to go stay in a hotel on a weeknight if they have kids that have school and everybody works and all that stuff. We recognize the people that are living in these units, they have lives to live, and we don't get to just come in and shut everything down and do what we need to do and take control and kind of kick you out or anything like that. We're all on the same team when we're doing this work. Uh, Timeline of repairs. First thing, phase 1, the assessment and planning. I was talking a little bit about it before. We conduct a thorough inspection of existing plumbing system. We go through, we look at all the wet walls. We walk through with the testing company so that way they can, take samples for the walls that will be affected. We develop detailed repair plans and specifications, and then we put it out to bid and select a contractor. Phase 2, scheduling. We create unit schedule with all unit finishes identified. That's for each unit. So when the contractor is bidding, they know what to expect in that unit. It's going to be sheetrock, if it's, the type of texture, if it's knockdown, if it's orange peel, this, that, the types of vanities and everything. And then we're also, for the scheduling, we're looking at, okay, what building is the contractor going to start with? What side of the building? Like I was saying earlier, it's done by a stack. They do the work vertically, not horizontally, because that's how the plumbing is lined up. Phase 3, material procurement. Order and receive all necessary plumbing materials and supplies. That was a problem during COVID. We had to get a lot of supplies in advance. Since then, that's kind of leveled out. Most of the stuff is very readily available, but still they need to get everything in advance. We don't want to start working on something and then say, oh yeah, we ran out of materials. That doesn't look good for anybody. And then after it's scheduled, we're at phase 4 here, the demolition and abatement. If asbestos is present, execute professional abatement procedures. That's what I was talking earlier. There's a company that comes in, that is all they do is abatement, is asbestos removal. And once that is out of the way, then the plumbing crew can come in and start rerunning the supply lines. Typically, when they do the supply lines, well, I'm jumping in. So kind of phase 4, phase 5 go together. You're demolishing the walls, you're getting access to the plumbing lines. They'll typically install the new plumbing, the supply lines, they'll run them right next to the existing lines. So then that way they don't have to keep shutting water off, turning water on. A lot of these buildings that we go to, I've had a couple of properties where they only had a shut off out at the road to shut the water off to the entire property. First thing we do is start putting in shutoffs for each building, and then we get for the stack. And ultimately, at the end of the day, each unit has its own shutoff. So it's all very controlled. But we run the supply lines typically next to the existing supply lines that are already there, and then it's a switch over, it's a 1 day thing. The drain lines, those have to be removed and replaced, systematically. They do that. They start at the top and then they work their way down and they're replacing it as they come down and getting the new drain lines installed and everything. As this work is all being done, we've got, building inspectors are coming in, they're checking everything. The plumbers are testing, it's all required, to make sure the supply line, it's going to hold the water or it's not. As soon as you charge it, you'll know that. But the drain lines, they put water or air in there and then they cap them and they put them under pressure, make sure there's no leaks or anything like that. Oh, then here's the fun part. This is what everybody really gets to see. It's the restoration of all the affected surfaces. When we do this work, we say we're patching everything back in, but we're not just doing a patch like on your wall to where it's just like, yeah, it's just this, little 2x2 section or anything like that. It's got the, you know, yeah, that's the area where they remove the sheetrock. They get that reinstalled, but when they do the patch, they paint it from corner to corner and floor to ceiling to make sure everything blends in. Paint, if you painted something 2 months ago and try to come back and just paint a corner of that wall or something, you will see a difference in the paint. This is usually where I become very picky because this is what all the owners see. A lot of times in these units, people don't necessarily notice a difference if they're not having pressure or temperature issues. Like CPVC, there's really no problem with that except the lines have been breaking and causing floods in units. And Murphy's Law, if that one of those lines is going to break, it's going to break on the top floor. So that way it rains down through the other floors and just causes as much damage as possible. So when they come back through and they're doing all the restoration work, this is what everybody sees and, judges the work by. Timeline, some considerations, you know, done quite a few of these. No two projects are the same. I know this sounds kind of generic, but everything, all the considerations, it's the building size, it's the plumbing system. Is it just each unit getting, cold water and each unit has its own hot water tanks, or is it on a boiler system? Those all play a part in how long this will take. Your floor plan, like I was saying earlier, if your kitchens butt into each other, which kitchen do we go through? Bathrooms, if they're butting into each other, there's that. Or, there's some projects where, they had the forethought and all their plumbing is on not necessarily an exterior wall, but it's exterior the unit that goes to like the open hallway for the building. So then we can just open the hallway wall up and access most of the plumbing from that hallway wall. And then really, there's been a couple of properties that you can access all the plumbing from the hallway. And really the only work you have inside the unit is when you're in the bathrooms, you've got to get in there. If it's one bathroom against that wall, you've got to get in there and open in the ceiling in the bathroom so they can get to the toilet and the tub drain from down below and get those installed correctly. There's no other way to do it. There's different ways to look at, the phasing approach for larger communities. Some properties, they can go pretty quick. And then, I've had anywhere from 4-month project to just about 2 years because of just the number of units and the amount of work that was required. How invasive is it? I'm going to be honest with you. It's very invasive. I was saying that earlier. We're in your most, we're in your kingdom. It's your house. It's your unit. It's your biggest investment. And not are we just in your unit. We're in your most private spaces, in your bathroom, under your sink, behind your toilet, all that kind of stuff. But we do it with a plan and it minimizes the impact. We have wall openings that are required, but we're not just opening the whole wall to open the whole wall. We just open what's required. We try to stay 6 inches away from corners, floors, and ceilings in the sheetrock because then we don't have to, it's a lot less work to come in and then blend that in when you're taping and mudding and doing all your texture work and everything like that. Water shutoffs, I was talking about that. We try to keep that very minimal. Get switched over and have shutoffs for the buildings and the units. Typically, there's maybe 2 to 3 days where there's shutoffs for a stack. That is all communicated well in advance. That's the biggest key to this is communicating. As an association, communicating to your owners and residents what is coming, and then once that is all communicated, J2 will meet with the board, work out all the planning and everything. But then we like to have a big construction kickoff meeting, and then we get in front of all the owners. We have a town hall meeting and get out there and answer all the questions because there should be a lot of questions. There is a lot going on here. Noise levels. Can it be noisy? Yeah, when they're doing the demo, it can get a little bit noisy. When they're doing the restoration, that's typically not too noisy once they get everything reattached and all the sheetrocks reattached and screwed back in. But it's not super noisy. I guess COVID kind of helped us fix that because we had a project that worked right through because it was, the work needed to get done and everything like that. And so we've worked in units. It's been more common since then that people, a lot of people work from home. That's kind of leveling out now, I guess, but we've been used to having people doing Zoom meetings from home. So when people have Zoom meetings, that is all communicated with the crews that are on site. Hey, I got this meeting. It's going to be this afternoon at 2 o'clock or whatever. Can you guys plan accordingly? They do that. The project summary has the duration in each unit. It's usually 5 to 8 weeks. Managing expectations with residents. That's getting in front of them with the kickoff meeting and explaining them the whole process. That's what's different than this. I'm kind of just sitting here talking. Not totally cool with that. I like doing it, talking, and then having people kind of ask questions because then it helps me guide me through this too a little bit easier. I don't know. Unknown plumbing layouts. Actionable steps and solutions. Engage specialized expertise. Examples of each. Hire plumbers with proven experience in older building systems. Utilize diagnostic tools. Cameras. Lots of cameras. There are plans that have your building was built to plans. Those plans aren't always exactly right 100%. So we like to kind of make sure we can use cameras and look at things and trace where the water is going and all of that. Once we do all of this, then we do create what is an as-built documentation. So people know what was done where and how to access if anything needs to be accessed. Warranty for repipes. There's the manufacturer material warranties. All the materials, pipes, the fittings, they've all got their manufacturer warranties. They typically cover defects in the materials, offer long-term protection against premature failure, clarify duration and scope with the suppliers, or you can ask us, your consultant, to do all this for you. There's the comprehensive labor warranties. Contractor should provide clear and detailed labor warranty. It covers workmanship of the installation. Specify the duration of coverage, types of issues addressed, leaks, and proper connections. This all must be in writing. And thorough warranty documentation, keeping track of the documents. This is always a challenge for associations, but we put all this, everything's pretty digital now, or it's all digital now, so that makes it a lot easier to keep track. We're not walking around with big sets of plans, or, nobody's got keys to the manager's office that's got the old file cabinet. I'm not saying you guys don't have that stuff. I'm sure a lot of you still do, just that stuff hasn't been digitized yet. Other key plumbing considerations. Garbage disposals. Garbage disposals, they're the bread and butter of plumbers. I hate them. If I was in an association, I am in an association, but it's houses, so I don't have any control over people's plumbing. But I would not have garbage disposals because it gives people a false sense of security. They think they can just grind up anything and just rinse it right down their lines. Well, that's not the case. If your association does still allow garbage disposals, I would consider having them removed. It will take a lot of pressure off of your existing system. Or if you go through, when we do repipes, a lot of times we've gone through and do the repipes, and as part of the repipe, we do remove all the garbage disposals, because you're just throwing debris in a line. Fire sprinklers, there's, a lot of buildings, they've got fire sprinklers. That's slightly different plumbing. You've got wet and dry fire sprinkler lines and everything like that. It's typical. The fire sprinkler lines are not part of the repiping projects, but that's something to consider. The water pressure, high or low, we were talking about that earlier. That can have the corrosion that's blocking the volume of water. Backflow prevention, that sink down there on the right. Unfortunately, if you're on the ground floor, usually that's your unit that ends up showing that. If you're ground floor and you don't have a crawl space and the lines just go right into the slab on grade, then you've got to run cameras and get those lines cleaned out. To replace those lines, we've done that before, but essentially you've got to empty that unit out, because you've got to cut the concrete out and rerun all those new drain lines beneath that concrete floor. That is a whole nother task of work right there. Here's a picture of the pipe scope. When you're running a camera through there, they clean the line, they run a camera through there, you get to see all kinds of stuff that you probably never really wanted to see. But the biggest thing is when they drop that camera line in there, they can see they can't necessarily see cracks in the drain lines or anything like that. But what they do see is where there's debris buildup, or where there's we call it a belly in the line where it dips down. So if the line's dipping down, that's the low point, you're going to have some debris that starts to settle there. And as that debris settles in that low point, it just keeps building up, building up, building up, and then it dams up, and then stuff gets caught on it, and then that gets your blockage. There is pipelining. We've kind of gotten away from that, because when that came out, so when pipelining first came out, people were using that inside buildings. You're not supposed to use it inside buildings. It's a Band-Aid. You cannot use pipelining. You can't get it permitted inside the structure. It can only be used on the side sewer going out to the city hookup and everything for your drain line out to the sewer. So when they did these, this got really hot about 15 years ago. In the past, 5 years, even, 10 years ago, it's becoming more frequent now, to where these liners are starting to give way. And so as soon as that pipe liner lets go, what does it do? It creates the dam and starts blocking stuff. So we really try to stay away from the pipelining because it is just a quick Band-Aid fix. It can lead to bigger problems down the line. And there's those pesky garbage disposals again. I'm sorry, all you guys that love garbage disposals and everything, but your plumbing lines cannot take it, and it's a serious problem in most jurisdictions that the utilities, how long ago did they put all the lines in the ground and everything? Our local plumbing, was it Alderwood, Waste and Water, all that, they're struggling too. So the less that we're pumping into the system, the better. It should just be water. We've all got recycle bins that we can put the food waste in and everything. It's not Garbage disposals have gotten way more use than they should have. I'll stop with that. Fire sprinklers, like we had talked about before, the fire sprinklers, they they're part of the plumbing system, but not the system that we are addressing. Plumbers do plumbing work, and then you've got different plumbers that do fire sprinkler systems alone. Because some of those are wet systems, some of those are dry systems, and they're all very different. And I cannot believe that I just went through this that quick.
This podcast is part of J2's free live webinar, The Building Doctor Show. To attend the live show and ask your questions during the Q&A, visit www.j2consultants.com.